We're going to compare monopoly with perfect competition here. Now, I love these questions that compare market structures. If you can nail some of those old questions from a few years ago that ask you to compare market structures, you're all over market structures. They're the hardest questions. I really like them because they're a great test of understanding, but they are tricky and they're definitely ones that students have struggled with. Now, what we're going to do here is, there was a question a few years ago that I said something like, compare monopoly and perfect competition under the headings of price, output, profit and efficiency. So the last two of those, profit and efficiency, are easy enough because we should know that the monopolist can earn supernormal profits in the long run, but perfect competition, you can't earn supernormal profits in the long run. You can earn them in the short run, but only normal profits are in the long run. And that's your comparison there. And then efficiency, perfect competition is the only market structure where the firm produces at the lowest point of its average cost curve in the long run. So that makes it efficient. And then monopoly, the firm doesn't produce the lowest point of its average cost curve. So you can have separate knowledge there to compare them. But comparing price and output is pretty hard. I think that if you want to compare price and output, you need to actually put both market structures on the one diagram. And that's the only way you can really get your head around it. It's a bit like when we looked at the difference, or we compared price and output for the short run and the long run in perfect competition, we looked at them on one diagram. And I think that's the only way that you can really do it. Now, if you're looking at the diagram that's on screen there that you have in the notes in the book in front of you, it says, okay, this is a comparison with other market structures. We're talking about comparison of monopoly with other market structures, right? And we're going to compare monopoly with perfect competition. Now, you look at that graph and it's the noise coming off it is deafening. There's a lot happening. But if we just kind of break it down a little bit, we can make some meaning of it, right? So as always, you've got price there and we've got quantity down the horizontal. And if we just look for the monopoly bits to start off with, right? So remember, monopoly, we have a downward sloping demand slash average revenue curve. So that's that, demand slash average revenue. And then we have a marginal revenue curve that is below that and a little bit steeper. So that's this guy here. So we'll just label that marginal revenue. Now you have a loosely kind of tick-shaped marginal cost curve. So here we are here. And goes up like that. And we'll label that marginal cost. And then we've got our U-shaped average cost. So that's it there. So all that stuff there, that's just the monopoly stuff, right? And that's stuff that we should be familiar with. So then let's say that I want to find out, okay, where does marginal cost equals marginal revenue, because that's the equilibrium position. So if this is, remember, you got to always be so deliberate about this. You can't be careful enough. So I'm here, okay, that's marginal cost, that's marginal revenue. Where they intersect is there. So that's the equilibrium position for the monopolist. If I drop a line down, that's the quantity produced by a monopolist. It says there QM, so quantity monopoly. And then if I want to find out the price charged by a monopolist, well, I follow a line up to the average revenue curve, then over to my axis, and that's the price. So you can label that there, price monopolist. Now, if you want to find out, well, what's my level of cost faced by the monopolist? Well, let's start down here at my quantity, go up to my cost curve, and bring a line over, my cost to be over there. But anyway, we don't need to compare costs here anyway. Now, so that's something that we should be familiar with. It's the equilibrium position monopoly. If you want to add perfect competition onto that diagram, right, you only need to do one line. You literally only one line. If you remember in perfect competition, what the long run equilibrium position looks like, the average cost curve sits on top of the average revenue curve. So all you have to do is add in a second sort of demand average revenue marginal revenue curve. So if I want to put perfect competition onto that diagram, the only thing I have to add in is underneath my average cost curve, so where my average cost curve is just sitting on it, I put in a demand average revenue marginal revenue curve. So I just put in this line here. And I've had a perfect competition. You've done it. They're both on the one diagram now. That's all there is to it. So remember, you have this is unique with perfect competition, that you have this horizontal demand curve, perfectly elastic, and demand equals average revenue equals marginal revenue. So their average revenue, marginal revenue are the same in perfect competition. And now you can go ahead and find your equilibrium position for perfect competition. So if this is our marginal revenue, and this is our marginal cost, you want to find out, okay, where do they intersect? Well, then that's here. So that's your equilibrium position for perfect competition. And then you can drop a line from there and have your quantity in perfect competition. And then you can also find out your price in perfect competition. So trace a line to the demand average revenue curve, over to the axis. That's your price in perfect competition. And now you've got it all in one diagram. You've got both prices and both quantities, and you can compare them. And all that exam question really wants you to say is whether, one is higher or lower than the other. So here, the monopolist price is a lot higher than the perfect competition price. That's all you have to say. And the perfect competition quantity is greater than the monopolist quantity. That's all you have to say, and you've compared those two things. So the other two headings about efficiency and supernormal profit, we can use our general knowledge to do that. We don't really need the diagram bit. So if you look at the answer here, so price, a firm in monopoly, they sell output at a higher price, so that was PM in the diagram, compared to PC, which was price perfect competition. Output then, we said that a firm in monopoly produces a smaller output than in perfect competition. So there was the monopolist output, that was perfect competition. Profits, we can just use our general knowledge, but good idea to always give the condition for things, because average revenue equals average cost, so that's normal profit in perfect competition. The firm earns normal profit, and because average revenue is greater than average cost in monopoly, they're earning supernormal profit. So always give those conditions. Always show that you know conditions to the examiner. Same thing if you're ever talking about equilibrium in one of these diagrams, you're always going to quote marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Efficiency then. A firm in perfect competition produces at minimum AC, and so they're efficient. In monopoly, that's not happening. The firm does not produce at the lowest point of their average cost curve, so they're inefficient. That's all you need to say. So it does help to put them all in one diagram, but just know, actually, it's not that hard to do if you ever had to do that. And so many students struggle with that. Because yes, it does look like this big complicated thing, but just draw a monopoly. Draw a monopoly and add in that line. And from there, you follow your usual process. What quantity do they produce? Find where marginal cost equals marginal revenue for both of them. Then you get your quantity, then you get your price. And that's all you're done for this particular question. So those old questions that compare market structures are some of my favorites, and I definitely encourage you to go back and look at them, because if you can master them, you have it down. So final thing there, compare them under some other headings, right? So barriers to entry. Well, perfect competition, there's no barriers to entry. With monopoly, there are barriers to entry. So that's pretty clear. So what is the implication of that? Just means with perfect competition, no supernormal profits can be made in the long run. With monopoly, supernormal profits can be made in the long run. Profits in the long run, so the next one, well, I've answered that. There's only normal profit for perfect, and a monopoly you can earn supernormal profit. Economies of scale. So again, we just use our general knowledge of economics to answer that. Like, we should know that economies of scale are things that their benefits that only happen for big firms. In perfect competition, go back to your features of the market. That's your essential knowledge. And we know that there's small sellers. So small sellers, and one of the disadvantages of perfect competition as a market structure is firms don't benefit from economies of scale because they're too small. So there is no economies of scale, but the monopolist is one giant firm. The firm is the industry, so they do benefit from economies of scale. We should know that one of the advantages of monopoly as a market structure is that there's economies of scale that may lead to lower prices for the consumer as a result. The final thing there is to do with price discrimination. In perfect competition, they cannot practice price discrimination. They must accept the market price. Remember, the individual firm is a price taker, but the monopolists, they can practice price discrimination. They have complete power and control over the price charged or the output produced, but not both. So some of that we're using general knowledge, but I think comparing the price and output does help to be able to draw it in one graph. And it has come up that one time to do it, but it's not as difficult as it might seem. But really nail down those old comparison questions. And if you can, you've got a great handle on market structures.